Cortical field reeducation, CFR, is a blend of the work of Moshe Feldenkrais, a physicist who applied his knowledge to human biomechanics, John Upledger, an osteopath who propagated craniosacral work, and Lansing Gresham, developer of integrative awareness. Harriet Goslins, a certified Feldenkrais practitioner who was trained directly by Moshe Feldenkrais, combined these works to relieve physical pain and symptoms. Cortical field reeducation, CFR, addresses musculoskeletal symptoms like low back and neck pain, nerve root impingement, scoliosis, degenerative disc disease, thoracic outlet syndrome, shoulder impingement, golfers or tennis elbow, carpal tunnel syndrome, pain in the hands or the fingers, hip dysfunction, knee problems, ankle sprains, pain in the feet or the toes, any symptoms that deal with the muscles or the bones of the body. In addition, cortical field reeducation influences more global symptoms like arthritis, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, immune system imbalances, and the residual effects of traumatic brain injury or stroke. Cortical field reeducation addresses 4 components of healing, pain, and dysfunction.
The first component of cortical field reeducation, CFR, is the biomechanics of movement. Bio means life, and mechanics is the way each individual joint moves within your body. As a physicist, Moshe Feldenkrais understood mechanics, pulleys, levers, and force vectors. And basically, this is how our body moves. Muscles are pulleys, bones are levers, and we have many, many force vectors, but 2 common ones are gravity and any load we might be carrying. A joint is made up of 2 bones. An individual joint in your neck or back is made up of 2 vertebrae. The shoulder joint is made up of the upper arm and the scapula. The hip joint is made up of the upper leg and the pelvis. If those 2 bones interface well without causing damage to the bone itself or the soft tissue around it, we call that optimal biomechanics. If those 2 bones don't interface well together, this causes a breakdown in the soft tissue. This includes tendons, ligaments, bursa, connective tissue, and even the joint capsule. Interestingly enough, it is often not the symptomatic joint that is the root of the problem. How can we influence the joints of our body so that they can function with optimal biomechanics?
Your brain determines how a joint will function. The sensory motor cortex is the part of your brain that senses a stimulus and has a motor response. For example, if I try to balance on one foot, I might sense I'm falling. In response to that, I might flex my hips. That's a motor response. I might side bend. That's a motor response. I might bring my arms overhead. That's a motor response. A neurologically healthy child spends the first several years of his or her life developing the sensory motor cortex by exploring and discovering the most efficient biomechanics for each joint. The most efficient way to reach with the shoulder, the most efficient way to use the knees for squatting or coming from sit to stand, the most efficient way to use the hips for walking or running or jumping. Every neurologically healthy child innately finds these efficient patterns of movement without outside help, and those patterns, once laid down in the brain, remain there. Feldenkrais developed a method to remind the sensory motor cortex about these efficient moves. Biomechanics is a huge component of cortical field reeducation. When a joint moves optimally, you do not have symptoms.
Another component to healing is examining how emotions affect our body systems. We've all felt the physiological effect of emotion when we have blushed. In response to an emotion, our brain has instructed the blood vessels in our face to dilate. An article in the LA Times states that the brain reacts in the same way whether a person is feeling a body blow or a social blow. Emotions can change the way our body is held and how it functions.
A third component of healing is bringing homeostasis to your electromagnetic field. My training as a physical therapist required that I understand how electromagnetic energy affects biological tissue. Here's a quote from my textbook. The purpose of using therapeutic modalities is to stimulate a specific body tissue to perform its normal function. The goal of a sports therapist should be to deliver sufficient energy in one form or another to stimulate the tissues to perform their normal function. So the question isn't, can electromagnetic energy influence biological tissue? The question is, does the source of the electromagnetic energy have to come from a machine plugged into a wall? Could the human hand produce an electromagnetic field that could stimulate healing? Finally, it is well understood in the 21st century that a human spirit is involved in healing. Carl Jung said in his book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "I have treated many hundreds of patients, the larger number being Protestant, a small number Jews, and not more than 5 or 6 believing Catholics. Among all my patients in the second half of my life, there has not been one whose problems in the last resort was not that of finding a religious outlook on life. It is safe to say that every one of them fell ill because he had lost that which the living religions of every age have given their followers, and none of them has really been healed who did not regain his religious outlook." Whether you consider yourself religious or not, you hold a spiritual component that affects your health. Recognizing this aspect of your human experience plays a role in the resolution of your symptoms. We have reviewed 4 components of healing: biomechanics, emotions, energetics, and spirituality. Healing begins and is concluded when all 4 of these components are addressed to whatever extent they contribute to your symptoms. One person's symptoms may be 90% biomechanics and 10% other. Another person's statistics may present differently. Cortical field re-education brings awareness and options to your attention. Moshe Feldenkrais said, "Until you know what you do, you have no choice to do otherwise." If you know what you're doing, you can choose to continue to do it or explore other options. This results in an available body that accesses optimal motor patterns in a myriad of situations to allow for pain-free function and fun. Moshe Feldenkrais said, "Movement is life."